All right, guys, Darren from FBA Elite, and welcome back to another video. So after the recent videos where I covered product research criteria and how to find products to sell on Amazon, in this week's video, I'm going to show you how to actually contact suppliers in Alibaba, how to make sure you actually contact good suppliers, and also give you some tips on how to negotiate, as well as the actual email template that I use for contacting those suppliers. So this question actually came up on the FBA Elite forums this week. We have a section just for suppliers and importing actually. And someone asked, it was about how to find a manufacturing company rather than a trading company. Now, in theory, a manufacturing company on Alibaba should give you lower prices as there isn't a middleman. However, don't rule out trading companies. Sometimes they have access to factories that aren't available directly on Alibaba. So don't always rule a trading company out. I know a lot of people do see a trading company as a bad thing, but don't rule them out just for that reason. Find a proper reason for ruling them out, because sometimes, and I've had this before, I find a product I want to sell, but I can't find the actual manufacturer themselves, but the trading company can provide that middleman. So as long as the trading company can take care of you, can give you exactly what you want, and your profit margins still stack up, don't rule them out. So going back to Alibaba, and as with Amazon, Alibaba can be a bit of a minefield. So I want to give you a few of the tips that I use to try and find good manufacturers. I'm not saying this is going to work for everyone, and I'm not saying it's guaranteeing you won't find a manufacturer who's going to let you down, but hopefully by taking these steps, it will certainly improve your chances of success and finding a good manufacturer. So tip number one, when you come to Alibaba, I don't want you to search by products, because that will bring back far too many results. I want you to search by suppliers instead. So click the little arrow there and choose suppliers. So that's the first hack. The next thing, pop in the product that you're looking for. So if, as you can see here, we've got the wooden chopping board example, which I always use in all of my videos. Let's try and find a supplier for wooden chopping boards. So if we were searching for products, rather than it being listed like this, if we clicked on the products tab here, you'll see the way it's displayed is very, very different. It's great to see the products, but actually we want to know more information about the supplier, because we need to find a good supplier more so than a good product, because a good supplier can provide a good product regardless. So going back to the product tab that I was just on, and the first thing that I want you to do is come up the top here and make sure you tick the trade assurance box. Now, trade assurance, in theory, should provide you additional protection if your supplier does not fulfill the contract that you outline when you actually place the order. Now, I know different people have had success with this, and I also know people where trade assurance has let them down. So it's not bulletproof. I don't think it's as strong as something like PayPal protection, but it's certainly worth having, and I would only search for suppliers that can offer this, as if they can't offer this, I'll be questioning why they can't. The next thing I would do is tick the verified box. Now, verified just means they are using either third-party data or an independent third party to verify the data of those companies. Now, there also used to be a tick box for gold suppliers, but I'll ignore anything to do with gold suppliers, as that is just a paid option that suppliers can tick when they sign up to Alibaba. So it doesn't mean that one supplier is better than another just because they paid more for their membership. The next thing I want you to do is then look at the age of the business. Now, generally, I want to see a minimum of 2 years, preferably a little bit older, but 2 years is a minimum. Someone that's only been in there 1 year old would be questioning why. So 2 years is the minimum I would start with. The next thing that I like to take a look at is the number of transactions. So a company that is actively trading on Alibaba is probably much less likely to let you down than someone that's maybe only had 1 or 2 transactions in the past 6 months. So take a look at transactions, make sure they've got a fair amount of transactions going through Alibaba. I also do pay attention to the response rate. Ideally, I look for maybe 80% plus, because I don't want to be emailing lots of people who never get back to me. But to be fair, if someone was at 60 or 70% and they were offering a particular product that I really wanted, then of course you're going to contact them. But if someone's only got a 20 or 30% response rate, you have to again be questioning what they're actually doing on here in the first place if they're only responding to that few inquiries. Now, before I click through to these companies to show you a bit more detail, just going back to the original question that I showed you on the FBA Elite forum, which was about how you can tell whether they're a manufacturer or a trading company. One of the giveaways, apparently, according to a really good video that Matt shared, was looking at how the company name is formed. So if it is a manufacturer, in theory, the company name should be the location, so the region or province in China where they're based, the name of the company itself, the main types of products they sell, then the type of company at the end. So if it doesn't follow that structure, the chances are they either, one, aren't a Chinese company, or two, they might be a trading company instead. So if we go back to Alibaba now, I'll see if I can find an example of this. And what I'll do is just scroll through some of these results to see if we can find some good examples. So, for example, here we have Fujian Fubu, Bamboo and Wood Products Co. Limited. So Fujian, in theory, should be a region or province in China. Then Fubu is the actual name of the company. Then Bamboo and Wood Products is the type of products they sell, and Co. Limited is the type of company. So this, based on company alone and based on the theory I've just shown you, should be a manufacturer. Whereas if we scroll back up, let's see if we can find one. For example, this one, there is no company type on the end. So potentially it may be a trading company. So just one of the small things you can take a look at which would help you to distinguish between the two. The other thing apparently as well is if the name is in brackets, this suggests that maybe they aren't a Chinese company, but another company that are actually selling in China as Chinese, but aren't. But again, I can't guarantee this, just based on information that I found in other videos. I can't 100% say with certainty this is exactly what it means. The other thing you can do is actually take a look at their address. So if we take this one here, which I just said possibly wasn't a manufacturer, and click on contact details, and I'll do the same for another one here that maybe looks like would fit with what we're saying. So, you know, province, name of the company, type of product. Click on contact details. Let's just come out of full screen mode. So the first one that I clicked on, which had the name in brackets, their address is building A3, and there we go. So potentially, you know, that isn't a factory, maybe. Whereas this one, you know, that isn't an office address. You know, this is an industrial development zone. So if it's a factory within that zone, it would make sense. These are more likely to be a manufacturer, and these are more likely to be a trading company. But again, this is all speculation. We cannot guarantee this 100%. And just one final tip before I come off Alibaba and give you kind of some tips for negotiating and show you my email template. Rather than contacting these individually, usually you want to put together one email that you send to all of these. If you add these to your favorites, so if you found multiple suppliers, you know, you can click on the favorites, click them all through there. Then when you actually go to your favorites page, which I'll show you now, let's click the check my favorites link. All you need to do then is tick the box on the left-hand side, which will highlight all of these, click contact supplier, and then you can just send one message to all of those guys, and you don't have to send individual messages. That's a good way of saving a bit of time, especially if you want to contact maybe 5 or 10 suppliers. Really good way of saving a bit of time. So when you're actually contacting these suppliers, what is the best approach to use? You know, I've seen lots of videos in the past which show you like a 1 or 2 page email that you send them, telling them all about your history and what you want to achieve with your company. My personal opinion is that is the wrong way to go. You have to remember all of the people you're contacting are salespeople. So you need to give them an impression that you, one, can be taken seriously and you know what you're on about, but also that you're not a time waster. So I like to keep these emails as short and as to the point as possible, and just focus on all the key areas that you want to look at. Don't worry about trying to negotiate at this stage. All we're trying to do is open that initial channel of communication. Then based on the reply we get, we can then take things further. So based on what I've just said, this is the email template that I use. And all you need to do is go to fbaelite.com, sign up, it's completely free. Go to the resources section, which is where we have all the templates and all the discounts. And if you go to the template section there, you'll see I have a template for contacting Alibaba. So, or should I say Alibaba supplier. So this is the email that I developed a couple of years ago. I would probably actually shorten this even further. I'll probably even remove this part now. Literally just introduce yourself and then ask the main key questions. So I want to know how much is a trial order of X amount of products. You don't even have to put trial. You can just put how much for an order of 500 units or how much for an order of 1,000 units. FOB, because they are the shipping terms that I want to use. You might find you don't even have to include that. You know, you might just say what your price is, and I'll come back and say, well, it's $5 EXW, which is X works, or it's $5.50 FOB. So again, a lot of this stuff you can tweak accordingly. It's not set in stone. As long as they understand the question, it's short, it's sweet, and it's to the point, then you should get a really good response rate. And I generally, pretty much, I'd say 9 out of 10, I get responses from using this template. What is the cost for a sample to be sent to the UK? As you're going to get a sample from any supplier that you use. I'm going to come back to that in a moment as well. And finally, can the following customizations be made to the product? Now, you might not want to include this in your initial email. If you're contacting 15 suppliers, you might want to leave this out. You might want to share that idea initially. Maybe when you shortlisted it to maybe 5 or so suppliers, that's when you start to ask some more in-depth questions about whether they can offer those customizations. Now, just going back to the sample bit, the sample process can be quite expensive. You know, it can cost you anything from maybe 30 to 40 pound, anywhere up to maybe 150 or 200 pound, depending on the product that you want and what customizations you want to make to the sample. So it's quite easily you could spend a few £100 during the sample process. So what I've been recommending to a lot of the people that I mentor at the moment is before they actually get to the sample process is to go onto Amazon UK or whichever country you're in and buy products from the existing competition. Buy something as close as spec as possible to the product that you're interested in, because then you can use those much cheaper products, only going to cost you 10, 15, 20 pound without the huge kind of shipping fees you'll have from bringing in the sample from China. Also, you're going to get it probably next day or within a couple of days rather than waiting a week or two. You'll get those products in hand and you can start to feel them, you can start to test them, and you can start to develop your own specification. So when you do contact these suppliers, when you request that sample, you can tell them exactly what you want. So rather than having to go through 2 rounds of samples where you're trying to develop the product, you actually know the spec in advance, and all you're trying to do is find a supplier that can actually develop that product to the specification that you want. Now, just before I give you those tips for actually negotiating with an Alibaba supplier, while you're on the FBA Elite section, make sure you check out the exclusive discount section. We've got a number of exclusive discounts on there, whether you want a Helium 10 discount, maybe a Link My Books discount to help with your accountancy, or even if you want to see the course that we recommend, definitely check out that section while you're on there. Also, if you're not signed up yet, sign up. It's completely free. Introduce yourself on the new members forums and then start checking out some of the great forum threads we've got going on, which cover all areas of Amazon FBA. But going on to actually negotiating with Alibaba suppliers, there are 3 tips I would give you when trying to negotiate. One is knowing when to negotiate. So as I mentioned earlier, don't try and negotiate on that first email. Someone's not going to take you seriously if you're trying to drive the price down as soon as you open that channel of communication. I personally prefer to get the initial costs, and as long as they're within maybe $1 or $2 of where I want to be long term, I won't actually negotiate until I get the samples from that supplier, because once I've ordered the sample from that supplier, they know that I'm a serious customer. So when I do start negotiating, they know that I am in a position to actually place an order. So that's tip number one, is knowing when to negotiate. Don't negotiate too early. And my personal preference is to wait until the samples have actually arrived before I start to negotiate. Now, tip 2 is a fairly obvious one, and that is I want you to play suppliers off against one another. Now, I'm not saying to play 5 different suppliers off against each other. What I mean is when you kind of shortlisted it to your final 2 suppliers, you really want to be in a position where you've got 2 viable suppliers so that you can walk away from one if you really want to. Never put yourself in a position where you're threatening to walk away from a supply if you don't actually have a viable alternative. But the best way to do it isn't to threaten to walk away. Instead, the way I've always played it is, look, we've got 2 suppliers. I really like working with you, but however, my business partner is pushing me to take the lower price from the other supplier. If you can get us to that same price, I'm sure I could convince my business partner to actually proceed with you instead. So whichever way you go about it, try and be as nice as possible. Try and make it as if it's not in your control. Try and work with them. You want to make it sound as if you two want to be on the same team, even if you're trying to play them off against another supplier. Just make it as if it's not as kind of direct as that. Make it a little bit more subtle. And then the final tip is to go in with a lower MOQ than you actually plan to order. So if you go in with an MOQ of maybe 300 units, but you actually plan to order 500, as you get towards the later stages of a negotiation, you can say to them, if I increase my MOQ from 300 to 500, can you reduce your unit price? So it gives you that little bit of scope. Obviously, don't start too low. Don't start with 100 MOQ and then jump to 500, because they're probably not going to take you seriously at that low number anyway. But certainly consider dropping your MOQ by 100 or 200 units on that initial contact, and then maybe upping it as you get to that point of final negotiation, and on the premise of you placing an order if they can offer you a final discount in exchange for a higher MOQ. So I hope you guys have found this video useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could take one moment, scroll down, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to discuss Amazon FBA with myself and over 2,000 other Amazon FBA sellers, head over to fbaelite.com. It's completely free. Sign up, and I'll see you guys on the forums.